Hi, this is Nilankur and welcome to this new show called Herald Cafe in Herald TV. In this show, we are trying to bring you eminent personalities of Goa and people who are visiting Goa. Now we are in this beautiful village called Korjue and we are going to meet two of them. Hi, today's guests are Orijit Sen, the popular artist. He's also regarded as a father of graphic novels in India, and Mr. Rakesh Khanna from Bluff Publication from Chennai. Rakesh Khanna publishes books like pulp fiction, graphic novels, and picture books of the young woman who loves monsters. Today we will talk about the book called The River of Stories, which was published in 1984 and reprinted this year as a collector's edition, hardcover 25th anniversary. Now we are going to meet the artist Orijit Sen and the publisher Rakesh Khanna to know from them about their experiences and about this new book. Hi, now I am sitting along with Rakesh Khanna of Bluff Publications and Orijit Sen, the pioneering artist, often regarded as a father of graphic novels in India. We have got some questions for them, and I would like to ask Orijit a few questions about your work and how you feel about doing what you are doing. So first I want to ask you about The River of Stories, which I gather is a book on displacement and critically look at the development projects. And I would like to ask you, what do you think have changed from then to now after the novel has been published in 84 and 94? And that graphic novel has shown a lot of paved a path for a lot of new graphic artists who are following that line, following that growth. And what is your idea? Is that that you have been able to create an ecosystem of a vibrant hope and graphic artists in India in general? Would you like to say something about that?
Yes. To begin, I would the issues that I was drawn into because of being involved with the Narmada Bachao Andolan in the 1990s. I think they were among the first mass movements in India that raised these questions of development. For who and at whose cost. Uh, uh, these are become very, very important today, and I would say we are seeing that from the anti-CA protests to the farmers movement. These questions are being asked with a lot of urgency now, but I think the Narmada Andolan was probably one of the first mass movements to raise this question in a very powerful way. So I think many of us, activists and artists and students, were drawn to the nature of these questions being raised at a point when India was and still is struggling economy. We have a lot of poverty. We have a lot of. I mean, we know all that. We know that things in India haven't reached a point where development has really brought benefits to the large majority of people. The poorer and the underprivileged have been kept out of this development story. And so I was very drawn to the issues that were being raised with the building of the Sardar Sarovar Dam. And it has a kind of universal resonance. these questions, and they become, as I said, even more relevant today. And I started documenting the movement, and I started documenting the people and their struggle, their opinions, their views, their critique of development as we conceive of it in India. And so that was in the 1990s, and I found myself wanting to document and tell that story at that time, bring that critique and that story that was happening in the Narmada Valley to urban audiences in cities like Delhi and Bombay, by using this medium of comics, which for me was something that I'm very deeply committed to, the idea of telling stories through images and text. And slowly, I think over time, this medium has itself sort of become some people have told me that they think that the influence of River of Stories has in a way shaped the way subsequent writers and artists have thought of the medium and used the medium. And if so, to whatever extent that is true, is I'm very kind of proud of that. I'm proud that perhaps a kind of a the first book being what it was my book has cast its kind of influence on future generations of makers. And today we are at a point where I think comics and its ability to create a kind of a social and political critique is widely recognized, and that is exactly what draws young creators to the medium. The ability to most other forms are much more formalized in a sense of the way they conceive, the way they created, the way they're funded, and all of that influences the kind of stories that are told through that particular medium. With comics, the fact that it's not like a very formalized, developed industry, I think it affords a kind of freedom of the individuals who work in that medium. I think that's what attracts talent, and that's what attracts creative people, so that they're able to address issues that matter to them without wondering. If you just take an example of cinema or film, or you always need a kind of a funding, you need a infrastructure, you need a all of which the industry provides, but it is something that of course has its, I mean, when somebody gives you money to do something, then it comes with a vested interest that you're getting this money in order to do this, and this is what the story that we would like to tell. With comics, there is less of that, and there's a lot more freedom for creators to express themselves. And as long as there are publishers who are also doing interesting, off the beaten track kind of work, and they're looking at new and interesting material, like Rakesh, for example, and Bluff Publications. And I think that these materials can come out, new works can be brought out, new works reach the public. Although what I'm talking about today, River of Stories, is not a new work; it's a 25-year-old work. But it's I mean it stays very relevant. So, and acquires a different kind of a meaning in today's context. So I think that is what I'm hopeful about. I'm hopeful that the comics medium is growing and will attracting a lot of both young creators and young audiences, and they're telling stories of which are not necessarily which are off from the mainstream narrative, which are focusing on very interesting aspects of life, contemporary life in India. And that's what makes me really sort of hopeful for the coming years for this medium in particular.
And Orijit, you put out in your stories like a lot of facts, like which are very hard to digest, but which are real facts. And now your books have been included in the academic syllabuses in so many colleges. What are your new projects that you want to, if you want to shape the thoughts of the youth? Do you have any plan to ignite the thoughts of the people, the youth especially?
While reaching out to audiences, especially young audiences, definitely something that matters to me. I don't create work with the idea that I'm going to now bring this subject to the fore. It the when I work on new projects, it usually is a result of something that that makes me that moves me, that engages me, and that I get involved with. And I have to have a level of, as you said, I mean, it's based on very factual research. I do a lot of research for my stories, not just the factual research, but also visual research to be able to draw stories that are authentic, compelling, and which, I mean, for me, comics is a medium that can allow you to enter into the world, into another world. It can draw you in as a reader, and it's very important for me how I place my story, the geography, the history, all of that comes in, both textually and visually. And I think the projects that have always been along that kind of nature, and what I'm doing right now also reflects some of that. At the present moment, I'm working on a very interesting book about a community of sex workers in a town called Sangli in Maharashtra. Mm, they in fact got in touch with me, and they have done an amazing. Their story is an amazing story of collectivizing together to fight against the everyday oppression, humiliation, sort of exploitation by a range of people, from pimps to police. They have collectivized, they have fought for their dignity, and they have achieved a lot. I mean, they are today a very empowered community of women. And it's indeed an inspiring story. So they got in touch with me saying that we want to tell our story through comics. And they have been influenced by, of course, they are now a pretty kind of, they're part of an international network of sex workers collectives, and probably they saw some comics, brought out by people elsewhere. And I was surprised that they knew about comics, and they felt that comics was the medium through which their story could be best told. So I'm working on that right now. It's been amazing. Very often we have documentaries and stuff about sex workers and their conditions and all of that. And often it is a sort of voyeuristic thing where somebody goes in from the outside and tries to probe into the lives, and the women or even the community of others involved with the trade and with sex work and other things are obviously not only suspicious, they are also very distrustful of outsiders who try to peek into their lives and their conditions. Here it's very different because they have called me in, and they want to share their story, and they are opening up to me, and they're telling me about what life has been and how they've collectivized, how they seek out. Today they have access to legal help, to healthcare needs, to all of this which the system never provides them and treats them as an outcast. Today they have got together and been able to sort of bring in all these issues which they feel and they know and they need. So it's really a kind of it's not exactly a revolution, but it's a sort of a way of upturning the social norms of that area, or how sex workers or people in sex work are always treated everywhere. And so their story is truly inspirational. So I'm very drawn into that right now. I've been traveling there, meeting up with them, discussing their lives and stories, and so I'm sort of in the middle of it right now. I'm sort of creating some narratives. It's also like River of Stories. It's based on very factual things about their lives and their struggle, but it is fictionalized with fictional characters, because I think that always brings in for me it's the ability to fictionalize brings in a very emotional angle to things which are otherwise presented as usually as facts or as whatever. I mean, to me, it's not a sad story. It's a story of hope. It's a story of struggle. It's not just a story of exploitation. So that's what I'm trying to put out.
And my next question is to Rakesh. Rakesh, whatever you are doing is very important because it brings out non-mainstream alternative point of views in in a different ways, like pulp fiction, Tamil pulp fiction, graphic novels, picture books. And can you tell us about how you come up about having an alternative book publication, which is very rare to see?
Right. So I think when my wife Rashmi and I started Blaft in 2008, we were just looking at what was available in English, in Indian by Indian writers in Indian bookstores, and it was very limited at that time. I think it was very highbrow. Either it was like literature which is written kind of with a foreign audience in mind, you're trying to win a Booker Prize in the UK or something like that, or even the stuff that was in translation was Sahitya Academy sort of sanctioned a certain kind of writing, which is about serious social issues in a certain tone. And comparing to the books that we like to buy when I went back home to California, there would be like a wide range of graphic novels and retrospectives of pulp fiction from the past and that kind of thing, and none of this was available here. And by contrast, like what we saw in Tamil at the bookshops in Chennai, was very different. There were murder mysteries, and there were supernatural thrillers and all kinds of stuff, and comics too. Like Ronnie comics and Lion comics, and these things were available. So it's changed a lot since 2008. There's graphic novels have started to be like you've said. People have taken graphic novels much more seriously recently, and. But at that time when we started out, we were interested in translating some of the Indian language literature that had not been translated before. And, Rashmi and I both love comics and graphic novels. And we'd published Apu Pen's first graphic novel, who also does the Rashtraman webcomic. And some other comics and picture books type things. So, we had, obviously we had heard about Orijit's book almost as soon as we started, and we're very keen to try to publish it. We've been chasing him for a long time.
Tell us about that story, how you know about Orijit Sen's work and how you chased to become the publisher of his book, and what effort that has gone into it.
Well, I think it's mostly just his daughter that convinced him to bring it out without doing a lot of updates, because he was wondering if he needed to update it because so much has changed, and the protest in some sense failed. The dam was built, and the Andolan changed to like helping the displaced people, so. He was thinking he would do an update or do a forward or write a new chapter or something like that. And finally, I think his daughter convinced him that it was for the historical record, he should bring out an edition. And I'm glad she did that.
Okay, my last question to both of you, actually. I'll start with you first. What do you think about Goa? Did it help you creatively? Or I know you do not stay here, you stay in Chennai, but you keep coming here often. And why do you like this place? Something about Goa for our audience.
Well, I did recently work on a book of folklore about ghosts, monsters, and demons of India. And there are so many fun legends from Goa. So that was amazing, is researching that, like the story of Kristalina from Salingao and Deochar, if I'm saying that right, and all these different supernatural entities around Goa I find really fascinating. I love Goan folklore.
Orijit?
Yes.
About Goa? Like why it was shifted here?
Yeah. Well, I have a very long love affair with Goa. I first came here as a student at NID when I was doing graphic design in mid-1980s. And I just came here on a solo adventure trip. And the moment I came here, back then, Goa has changed a lot in the intervening years. But there is something about its character that remains the same for me. But back then, I fell in love with it. It was like love at first sight. I was like, oh, one day I'm going to live in this place. And eventually I graduated. I started my professional life in Delhi. I lived there quite long. We started our own small business in Delhi, my wife and I. But there was that idea of somewhere at the back of the head always, like we should go and see what things are in Goa. And so we used to come, for not our regular holidays, but we would come and stay in somebody's house in places closer to the beach area. But that love for Goa just kept sort of growing like slowly. And finally in 97, we came here with the idea of trying to settle here or find a house we could kind of call our own or something. And at that time, Goa was still very disconnected with the rest of India. You had to take, there were no cheap flights, of course. Of course, there was no internet and very little telephone connectivity. And you just had to come here by train, change to meter gauge train in Miraj and take the overnight route over the ghats into Goa. And so we came and we stayed about 3 months, I remember, looking for a place. We put out some ads. We had a few friends in Goa, close friends, particularly Claude and Norma Alvarez, who were at that time running the Other India bookstore. We used to also sell their books in Delhi, and also the Other India Press and all of that. So I started doing covers for them, the cover designs. So it gave us a small foothold to know them and to be able to have a sort of a connection with them and do some work for them, earn a bit of money. That allowed us to shift to Goa. We found this old house which we are sitting in right now, and even then it was actually it is still a somewhat isolated part of Goa, where we are, Korsjoe, near Altona. But at that time it was even more so. And so we have been living and we have been engaging with Goan work and life in different ways over the years. And I remember I also initially did some work for the Goa State AIDS Control Society, creating newspaper advertisements about HIV/AIDS, and even some. I designed my first public hoarding for them, which was a thrill to see my artwork like blown up 150 times on a big hoarding. Anyway, so yeah, over time it became possible for us to think of, at that time when we first moved here, the environment wasn't conducive in terms of work. I mean, nobody really knew about design or what were designers doing or what were they needed for. So we couldn't find work like that. So we created work in little ways, and we had our own store, which we had set up in the Baga Kalangut area, and we used to sell things that we made, and that was mostly to tourists at that time. But then in 2013, the Goa University asked me to be a visiting professor, and I became the Mario Miranda Chair visiting professor, and I did a bunch of projects in and around Mapsa Market. And with mining communities displaced by mining or affected by mining. So my engagement with Goa has been long. It's both in terms of, like I said, it began as a love affair, but it's also something that I feel deeply committed to. I mean, it's a place, and its history, its ecology, all of that means a lot to me. And one day perhaps I will do a long book set in Goa, I don't know, but I continue to engage with Goa.
Thank you both of you for your time, and thank you for watching this episode of Herald Cafe. And another book launch is scheduled on November 25th, Friday at Literati. If you would like to get a signed copy of River of Stories and meet these two gentlemen, please come by. Thank you.